What is up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. And it's also the second week of our new era, or I guess you could call it, where I've been bringing on PokeTubers every week. Last week we had Birdkeeper Toby on. It was a blast. We talked about our dream Pokemon games and stuff like that. And today we've also got another very special guest to talk about some really interesting stuff as well, and that would be none other than Lockstin of Lockstin and Gnoggin. So welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so today we are going to be, I decided to bring Lockstin on, because he's an amazing YouTuber and PokeTuber, first off.
I'm super cool.
He is way cool. But secondly, we're both sort of doing a similar thing on our channels right now, where we're kind of exploring the idea of what if we made our own Pokemon games, where we're kind of making our own Fakemon and characters and having art commissioned and the whole 9 yards. And so because we're doing a similar thing, I thought I would bring Lockstin on to have a discussion about, like, if we were in the director's chair of a Pokemon game, what would we do? Like, what mechanics would we like to see implemented? What direction would we take that hypothetical game? Like, just anything that, like, we would want to see. What would we do if we were in charge, essentially? So this is going to be a really, really cool conversation, I think, especially being able to bounce off Lockstin's ideas as well. Before we get into that, though, I do need to thank the sponsors, as always, of this podcast. They help us keep things rolling. So with that being said, today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. The team of professionals at the Tax Defense Group are passionate about helping taxpayers resolve their tax debt. Their services include basic tax preparation, tax audits, resolving large tax debt, and more. They actively represent taxpayers throughout the entire USA. So if you need help resolving your tax issues, contact the Tax Defense Group. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online as well, thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you thinking of starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. So if you're interested and want to get that side hustle on, call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Okay, so into our discussion today. I figure I should let you lead off on this since you're the guest here, but are there any, especially with your project that you've been doing right now, with your hypothetical region and everything, are there any kind of features or just anything in particular that, like, if you were directing a Pokemon game, would be your first order of business to, like, make sure that got in the game? Like, what would be the biggest thing that you would make sure that happened right away?
Well, if we're talking more traditional Pokemon gameplay style, I definitely, first order of business would be figuring out how to implement at least one additional difficulty setting. Mm-hmm. I feel like that would basically answer most of my problems that I have with this franchise. That being that too often you can just grind your problems away.
Yeah,
I remember in Gen 2, like you still can brute force your way through everything, or you can figure out a strategy to figure out how to get through the game without such grinding. But I feel like as time goes on, maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but as time goes on, it's turning into an A-press simulator. When I played through Let's Go, I streamed a specific challenge where it was every Pokemon has one move. We literally, all of the battles were just A-press, and we did have a few difficult moments, but we were able to get through the game that way.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, is how you balance that. So I put no blame on Game Freak for taking the easier route here, because figuring out that balance between how much strategy you should expect the player to have with their available options versus grinding.
Yeah.
I don't even know where one would begin on that. That's like expert level design stuff.
Right, and maybe that's a reason why they haven't done it, just because there are so many things that you have to balance in Pokemon anyway, like from the type distribution of Pokemon that are in the game to their strengths and weaknesses and like abilities. Like there's so much that they're balancing already, so that could be a factor. But I definitely do feel like it's the kind of thing that like it wouldn't be the most difficult thing in the world to implement, even if you just like didn't necessarily like, even if they didn't what's the word, like increase the AI's like intelligence and just bumped the levels up like 5 levels or whatever, just to make it like harder that way in making the Pokemon stronger or whatever. I think that would go a long way for a lot of people, because I would say that for the last several years that's been kind of a major complaint of people. That is like somewhat, you can deal with it because like you said, you can do your own challenges, you can make it hard on yourself, but having that sort of just like default challenge that's in the game right from the get-go, like having a character that you just can't get past because they themselves are really hard, I feel like that's something that's missing from Pokemon. So I can definitely vouch for that too, because can you imagine like in Sword and Shield, for instance, if Chairman Rose, like when you were battling him, he, in my opinion, has the best battle theme like that we've ever had in Pokemon. That battle theme that he had was so awesome, but like the battle didn't really match the intensity of the music. So if you were just like grinding it out with a character like Chairman Rose and you were just going head to head and it was just super intense because it was difficult, it would add a lot more to the experience.
The best battles are the ones you almost lose but you still come out on
right
top.
Yeah, and that's kind of why like a character like Cynthia, everyone loves Cynthia just because she was hard and like she was a challenge. In terms of like my pick though, the thing that comes to mind for me that it's been on my mind for a bit that I really want to see them do is being able to challenge gyms, or I mean, I guess it could be whatever is a stand-in for gyms, but essentially being able to go in any order in terms of like the gyms that you're facing. With all the talk of like wanting an open world Pokemon game, I think, and this is also something that you would need to like, it would require some like programming magic, if you will, kind of like the difficulty setting thing. But I think if like being able to challenge gyms in any order, being able to sort of like make your own path in the region, it would really add to that sense of just, I guess, wonderment that the Pokemon games are famous for, where you're in this world and you've got all these creatures to find and you're just going out and you're having an adventure. That would really just bring that to the next level, because everyone's path would be a little bit different just depending on like maybe you saw something on the left trail that interested you and you decided to go that way, or vice versa, or whatever. It would be really, really cool, and it would add to like the replayability, because you could play through the game in obviously different orders and things like that. So that
adds a lot more replay
right
value.
Yeah, that is something that is really on my wish list, because it would really kill like multiple birds with one stone, kind of what you're saying with the difficulty setting, because not only would it add to that sense of adventure, but it would also, like I said, be a way that they could implement the open world idea that a lot of people are wanting and have it be natural. Because in Sword and Shield, for instance, where they like implemented it for the first time with the wild area, it was definitely a nice first approach, but it was also just like this huge giant like area right in the middle of the region that was kind of just blank, just there. And then it
felt like it was an afterthought.
Right, yeah, it was like very separate from the rest of the region, because you still had obviously cities, but then routes and stuff like that. So just sort of blending those two ideas together of like having a traditional region but then also making it seamless and stuff would be nice. Because I mean, even like in later Pokemon games, there's those roadblocks that are just they literally make fun of themselves, like, for being roadblocks for no reason. Like, there's I think in Black and White, there's like the dancing guys that are like, we're here for no reason and we're gonna be gone for no reason someday.
That was my favorite thing.
Yeah, so
I think that was the hardest I've ever laughed at Pokemon. It was
right,
amazing.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's definitely on my list for sure. Are there anything, like, because there's also the talk of just like the direction of the Pokemon games and balancing like accessibility versus like going in a more mature direction, if you will. Is there anything, I guess, in that sort of vein that you want to see them do, or just something that you want to see them try?
I really liked the idea that popped up when Let's Go came out, that like they were going for the more casual audience with that series, and then maybe then the main series could go in a more mature route, maybe, you know, mature in quotes, edgy, like Pokemon XD and those. I really liked that idea, because then you have your series that's accessible and easy, you know, aimed at kids more so than Pokemon already is. It'd create the best of both worlds, but I understand having two series running at the same time like that might not be good for branding.
Yeah,
it's a big marketing dilemma there.
Yeah.
So maybe Let's Go was an experiment for that on purpose, and I guess we'll see if a sequel comes out, a little Let's Go Johto.
Right. It's really, really interesting to think about the future of Let's Go, because it sold extremely well, certainly well enough to warrant a sequel, but it's like, where does it fit into like the release schedule of Pokemon? Because you've got, hypothetically, Let's Go Johto, that's one game that's on the agenda. You've got Diamond and Pearl remakes are coming out at some point, or like we know they are. The standard remake thing, that's going to happen soon eventually. And then you've got like your main series games. Between all of those, it really is hard to fit Let's Go into all of that, because there's just so much other stuff going on. So I'm really interested to see where that goes, because I personally really want another Let's Go game. I liked Let's Go a lot. I think I was talking to Toby about this last week. The art style and everything, I think it fits Pokemon really good in a lot of ways.
It did.
So
sure.
I'm hoping that happens. I'm interested to see what ends up happening. I was also talking to Toby last week about how, on the one hand, like Let's Go is basically like the very like kid-friendly side of the spectrum for Pokemon, and so I feel like, just to balance things out, there should be that more mature-ish type of like Coliseum-esque game on the other side of the spectrum, just to kind of even things out, because you've appealed to your kids and your first-time Pokemon players, and now it's time to give the veterans something. Like, we've been asking forever. It's like, just throw us a bone here.
Throw that 10 back onto the E.
What was that?
Aim for an E10 rating.
Oh yeah, E10. That's honestly perfect. It really
earned that 10 on there.
Yeah, exactly. Get almost to 11 almost. Just really push the limit. It really frustrates me almost when we get things like Generations, for instance, or even Twilight Wings that's out right now, that they have that more mature-ish vibe to them.
Yeah, like, but they keep experimenting with the idea and then not really doing anything big with it.
Right, yeah, even though they're all wildly successful and everything, and it's like, no big deal, like, we're just gonna keep doing our same old thing. Alright, so another thing I wanted to bring up were just like wild, I guess, just like gameplay mechanic ideas, something that's never, I guess, things that are different, quote unquote. One thing that really comes to mind for me that I think would be really cool, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I just like the idea of it, is starter Pokemon, either starter Pokemon that aren't your typical Grass, Water, Fire
I'd love
trio. That would be, that's the perfect kind of thing that's just, it's just different enough to pique your interest and like really get you like excited. It would be really fresh, but then it's obviously like not too different because there's still starters, there's still the type triangle type thing. It would be good. So either that, or I also really would like to see starter Pokemon that have branched evolutions, because I think that would add to the which starter do I pick type of thing even more. And even if it like messed with the balance at the end, I think it would be worth it, just because it would be, once again, that type of thing that's different, but just really, really cool at the same time. Is there anything like that you've ever thought about that would be cool?
Most certainly there is, but oh yeah, that's such an open thing. I know fusions is a popular answer. I've never been a fan of the fusion idea, though.
Right. I talked in a recent video that I did that I'm like super sure. You remember that whole fusion like conspiracy theory about Sun and Moon, where everyone thought they were going to take the diamonds from that manga and bring it into the games.
I kept my fingers crossed the whole time that it wasn't real.
Yeah, I did a video because I was recently like just looking at that idea again, and I feel pretty confident that was actually on the table at one point, because looking back at Sun and Moon and everything that's in Sun and Moon, like there's actually a Pokemon human fusion in the game with Lusamine and her Nihilego, and then there's the Ultra Beasts that like Pheromosa and Nihilego and Xurkitree that look like human characters like Lusamine, Guzma, and Lily. And so it just seems like between the initial theory that people had and that stuff that is in the game, it kind of seems like maybe there was something actually to that idea that they just dropped, because even in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Lusamine, the whole fusion thing, it was not in the game. They like changed Lusamine's role, and they had Ultra Necrozma be in the kind of the main villain, and that almost seems like they sort of took that opportunity to remove that out of the game after they
distanced themselves from the idea.
Right. Yeah. So pretty interesting. That definitely is an idea that's like, it could either go really, really good or terribly wrong. Because I remember when Mega Evolution came out, and
Digimon now.
Right. It was a huge like, oh, this is Digimon, like we've gone over the edge. And it was a huge deal. But then people obviously like grew to love it, and it's like amazing now. So I don't know. Fusion would be a little more extreme, but depending on
the only way that would work is if they did go the full like E10 edgy route. And
right.
The whole dilemma was like, is this a moral thing that we should be doing kind of deal?
Yeah, you could base a whole game around that. That would be cool.
It'd be more fitting for a spin-off than a main series, though, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like they could test it out in a spin-off or something like that.
And really, like that's what I want more than anything, is more spin-offs again. I loved the whole like DS era Pokemon games where they had like 2-3 spin-offs a year. Like Mystery Dungeon, Ranger was super cool. All those puzzle games.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring up specifically because I mean I do really enjoy the I guess like the Pokemon stadiums and like especially Pokemon Snap now that we're getting a new one. I love those types of ones, but I certainly do want to see more of your Coliseum types, your XD types that I guess are a little more, and even like your mystery dungeons that they're more of a RPG. They're more of like, I guess, a hardcore game, quote unquote. It's not like a casual like party sort of situation that has a story and like
it's much more traditional JRPG.
Right. Yeah. It's like, because like you said, in that era where you had like the DS era specifically, you had the Explorers of Time, Darkness Sky, you had the Ranger games, obviously Coliseum and XD were really good. Those types of games that just, they have a narrative. I think that's the biggest thing, is they have a narrative, are really, really cool. And now that we like are on the Switch, there's just so many more possibilities that they could go with. Like, even if they made, we obviously did get the remake of Red and Blue Rescue Team, but then I think basically the only other like major spin-off that we've got is Pokken, and I only ever played it on the Wii U. I haven't played the Switch one yet, but I really enjoyed it a lot, even if it's just like an arcade fighter, and there was like a teeny bit of story for the campaign mode, but if they added in like a little bit more story to it, just make it a little more intense, it would have been a lot more fun, I think. So something along those lines I'm definitely vouching for.
The Pokemon world is just so perfect to expand upon in just exploring different gameplay styles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's automatically perfect for like a roguelike kind of action RPG kind of game. Each time you play through the game, it's a new run, and you catch different Pokemon because they're the ones that happen to spawn in different areas.
Right.
You can fit Pokemon into almost any genre, but they seem lately, with the few exceptions of Pokken and such, they seem lately to be all either super casual mobile games or just your typical turn-based RPG style.
Yeah, it kind of almost seems like anything that's not the main series is sort of it's sort of a very targeted demographic, because Pokken was specifically more designed to get Pokemon in the competitive scene, I feel like giving a competitive Pokemon fighting game. And then
another step in the door.
Right, yeah. And then we've got things like Pokemon Smile, that's very directed at just getting at kids and
it's a wellness
saying,
product.
Hey, this is Pokemon. And then you've even got Pokemon Unite, that's trying to get into, it's trying to get into competitive a little bit, but then there's also the discussion that it's just trying to get into the Chinese market as well as a whole. So
that's a direction. Unite is absolutely a direction Pokemon is perfect for going into, and I hope they do more like that. Maybe not with Tencent, but just
I think that is the issue that most people seem to have with it. Yeah. But I think it'll work really good.
It's like partnering with EA,
Right, yeah.
Oh man, microtransactions exclusively.
Yeah. Oh man. So,
but if I had just full reign as a director over a Pokemon spin-off game, it would absolutely be something more just like action combat focused. And you don't even have to leave Nintendo for that, because Custom Robo hasn't had a game in its franchise since the GameCube, and its gameplay style is already perfect for Pokemon. That's one of my dream games, is just Custom Robo but Pokemon. Have you played Custom Robo before?
I haven't, but I've heard about it. What is the gameplay like exactly? I know it's kind of like it's similar, but
it's like a top-down arena shooter platformer kind of, but the whole so you have a big arena that has a bunch of walls and platforms moving around and stuff, and it's just 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 combat where you get to build your little robot with different parts, and each part is a move, and each move does something wildly different from the other, but no matter what, each robot only has 4 moves. So it's already perfect for Pokemon there. You customize which moves they have, and then you run them around, you do battles, and it's already there. You just literally swap robot parts for Pokemon moves. And it would sell trillions, I'm sure.
Right, yeah. That would be really cool. I was almost going to say that in the spin-off realm, they're the one kind of game I really wanted, but I guess we technically already got, was my original idea for this. I wanted a Pokemon mystery game, which is kind of pretty much what we got with Detective Pikachu. But when I really got into Ace Attorney a few years ago, I I was thinking about the idea of sort of a Ace Attorney Pokemon crossover type game where it's like you investigate different like crimes, like Team Rocket crimes or whatever the case may be, and just kind of have that style. I think that would be never going to happen, but just...
That sounds amazing.
I would love that.
I loved the world building of Detective Pikachu. It was... I just want more world building. That's...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And while we're at it, because Detective Pikachu is getting a sequel, so, I mean, it's interesting that they haven't, like, said anything about it, because it was announced, like, 2 years ago, almost, I think.
We're doing it.
So, yeah, I mean, the first one took forever, too, because if you remember, it came out in Japan in, like, I want to say 2013, and then it wasn't made, it didn't come to the US till, like, 2016. Or something like that. It was a huge delay. But, another thing in that same vein that would be really cool is just more sequels for games, whatever it is, whether it's spin-off or main series or whatever. Just keep your story going, because you could obviously do that for any game, but there's a lot of games in particular that are just almost begging for it, like Sword and Shield in particular. Not so like much a sequel, but it is actually, I mean, it's actually really set up for both a sequel and a prequel, because there's a lot of things on both sides of it that could definitely use some like more explanation. Like with the Isle of Armor that we just barely got, there was a lot of stuff about the past in terms of just like Sword and Shield characters with Mustard, and there were a lot of different things talked about with like Avery, his family. Apparently they're psychic type gym leaders, they have been or whatever. And there's even like in the base game, you've got Opal, who's been a gym leader forever, and she's even got concept art out there of her like when she was young. So there's a lot of just breadcrumbs there of just like the past.
I did notice a lot of themes of like passing the mantle with both Bede and Marnie and Sophia just all taking over for the professor and the other gym leaders.
Yeah, and then it's the opposite end of the...
Even Kabe, I think, was mentioning a lot of that. Like, I'm getting old. I need to find an apprentice kind of deal. It was definitely a big theme, which to me sounded like they were trying to set up a sequel. But then they keep adding little tidbits for the past also. Right, yeah, because then there's Hop, who's... I mean, he's Sonia's assistant, and then Sonia is the new professor, and you've got, I guess, all of the changes with the league itself, with Marnie becoming a gym leader and Bede becoming a gym leader and Leon kind of just taking over the chairman role, kinda, sorta, since Rose got arrested. There's a lot of potential there, and as much as I do like the expansion idea and them starting to go in that direction, I would like to see where something like that could go, for sure. So, all right. So we are almost out of time, but I think we're good for one more sort of topic. Another thing, I mean, there are obviously the main kind of general wish list type of things that people talk about a lot, with like being able to go back to like travel between regions again. That's a huge thing. There's the open world thing. I hate to like beat a dead horse, but the multiple region thing is something that someday I want to see again, and I'm never gonna like stop hoping for it until I see it again. And something has occurred to me recently that sort of, it doesn't really
lend itself to that idea that it could happen, but it's a really interesting idea that could allow it to happen. And that's just the idea of like another Japanese region in general, because we're sort of just like with Galar and Gen 8, the amount of non-Japanese regions and Japanese regions they're basically even now. We've got 4 Japanese, 4 non-Japanese. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next as far as like Gen 9, like a few years down the road, because
I could totally see them doing a Gen 9 being non-Japanese, just because it'd be theoretically happening right after a Gen 4 remake.
That's true.
But I could totally see Gen 10 going back to Japan. Potentially by then, it'd be whatever the Switch 2 is. Mm-hmm. So even more power. I could totally see them doing like multiple of the Japanese regions in one.
Yeah. Because that's kind of my thing right now, is that I just feel like the time is right for another Japanese region, because I don't know how important that is to Game Freak in terms of like the amount of Japanese versus non-Japanese regions, but I feel like if they were like hypothetically having more non-Japanese regions would be kind of a big deal, because it's obviously like it's all based in Japan, obviously, so that would sort of be just like symbolically just like a big deal. I feel like it would be, it wouldn't really affect too much, but it would be kind of crazy at the same time. So
really showing that Pokemon really is a global franchise now.
Right, yeah. And there's so many other places in the world as well, obviously, that you could base a Pokemon region on. But I think it just feels like it's time, whether it be Gen 9 or Gen 10, because I hadn't thought about the Diamond and Pearl thing. That does make sense to in terms of like sort of balancing it out, but I do kind of feel like it's almost time for another Japanese region, and I would personally really like to see that. It's probably up there in terms of like where I would put a region, because with having another Japanese region, what like you bring with that a lot of like connectivity to other regions and like crossover, just because you got Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh that are all so close. And that's kind of why we saw a lot of that happening in the Sinnoh game, the Johto games, whatever. Like there was tons of crossover because they were all just so like geographically close. So that's kind of
a new region would fit perfectly between Kanto and Sinnoh, because there's so much space there in actual Japan.
Right, yeah. So that's because that is another thing, kind of coming back to the main topic, that I definitely would like to see more of, is sort of returning characters, so to speak, where you've got just characters from one game, one region coming over and being involved in another region, like whatever the case, like whatever region we're in. Because in Sword and Shield that didn't really happen at all. It was very isolated, which like it does make sense in the sense that obviously it's based in the UK and whatnot, but you also had like Kalos that's right next door that you could have brought. Even just like you could have brought, just it wouldn't even have mattered who it was. You could have brought anyone and it would have been fine, but it was just pretty isolated. I was really surprised that Looker didn't appear in Sword and Shield at all.
Right? Especially if he is going to be a big part of the remakes.
Right, and he's going to.
I feel like they definitely are going to be, because that's like a big part of all the recent games. It's all been like telling every now and again we're just getting little breadcrumbs involving Looker, and I feel like the conclusion to that little side story has to be in the remakes, because that's where he's originally from and everything. I'm super excited for that. That's what I swear, if they've dropped it, I'm going to be so peeved.
Right. And it technically could still happen, because the Crown Tundra has yet to come out, and we know that it's going to have something to do, it has a lot to do with legendary Pokemon and sort of just like the main like guide character, quote unquote, whatever you want to call him. He's like in the area to research the legendary Pokemon in the area or whatever. That very much sounds like a Looker type of scenario to me. So like could still happen. We'll have to wait and see. But
do you think the Crown Tundra is going to explain how all of the legendary Pokemon are basically immortal? Just throwing a sudden theory out there.
I don't know, but I do like what I'm seeing in terms of like where the story could go, because it's very legendary focused. So we're gonna learn some details.
It's legendary
something.
focused. The Holy Grail is what grants immortality. The Chinese moon rabbit,
right,
is also what grants immortality.
Yeah,
legendary Pokemon are immortal. There's got to be some. I hope there's something, and it's not just me going crazy again.
I mean, it does seem like there's going to be something big there, because you've got, you've also got that cutscene where we see the legendary birds just fighting. Like, I mean, obviously that's just like flashy, just action or whatever. But it definitely seems like
it could be something like
intense.
The second movie.
Right, yeah, it seems interesting. It's piqued my interest. And then you've got the idea that because a lot of the returning legendaries, or basically all the returning legendaries, are returning in their the dens that you can explore. And there's the whole idea of whether or not that has anything to do with the underground of Sinnoh, or if it's like sort of like a parallel in any kind of way. So, like you said, I don't know if it's just like me hyping it up or whatever, but I feel like we're geared towards something happening in the Crown Tundra that's like, holy crap, they just like mic dropped a huge hint or something like that. I kind of get the vibe that something like that's going to happen.
Some sort of hinting towards whatever the big new thing in Gen 4 remakes are going to be. Because remember, when Gen 4 was first developed, they developed it as like a new starting point for Pokemon.
Right.
Like, and that's why the lore is all about the original creation of the Pokemon world.
Right.
So, like, right before remakes of that, it'd be super cool to have some sort of point, some cave of origin where a lot of the legendaries, like, come from, like spare legendaries. I could totally see them doing something like that.
It's going to be interesting. I know whatever is to come is going to be big, because the 25th anniversary is next year. So that's going to be just huge regardless. And I feel like the Crown Tundra is sort of going to be the lead into it, because it's at the end of the year, and it's obvious.
Also, it just feels like the Crown Tundra is much more lore focused from what they've shown. That's what it seems, the vibe of it seems to be, compared to Isle of Armor, which is kind of just use another wild area. Right,
yeah, it's much more, it's a lot heavier just in general, because like the open worldness of it, or I guess the area, seems a lot bigger than the Isle of Armor itself. And then, like you said, it seems like there's a lot more story going on, because you've got...
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if the Crown Tundra isn't even like a wild area. It potentially could just be a bunch of linear routes.
How do you mean?
Because it's so story focused.
That's true.
I don't know. I remember seeing that like data mine where we saw not the like map image, but just like where the locations for Crown Tundra are based, and like the area itself is much bigger, but it seems more fitting of like a linear, like several linear paths. I mean, potentially branching and lots of in between paths, but not like the wild area or the Isle of Armor.
Right. But it's
all just speculation though.
Right, yeah. But like the whole, because we know that it's going to be like seamless, like in terms of like being like the wild area. There's not going to be any like loading screens or whatever. It's going to be just like the Isle of Armor was, in terms of you can go from one place to the other. Like you can travel, you can go across the whole map and not experience any loading or whatever. But and the basic, and also just the area in general looks way more interesting. I really am interested to know what the whole thing is going on with the tree, because there's that big tree that's like huge and ginormous and sticks out, but then there's the other tree that's like far off in the distance that's like also just as big, but it's dead, and it's like coming out of that house or that giant building, and I want to know what that's about, because there's clearly something going on there.
Yggdrasil has died.
Yeah, are they ever gonna? I mean, it always seems like it always seems like they've got this running lore building that they're doing, and you know all about this because you've been making theories and stuff about it, how they're like all the stuff they've done with alchemy and stuff. It seems like, I don't know, it just seems like they're almost teasing us with that, because they keep it going and they sort of like keep building on it and make it seem like they haven't forgot about it. They're still like, they'll add it, like, once again, breadcrumbs here and there to where they make us think that something's going to happen eventually, but we haven't really had the ginormous, like, cataclysmic climax type of scenario that we're, I guess, sort of all expecting, which could come theoretically in the remakes, just because of, like you said, the theme of just like, it's the origin point of everything or whatever with Arceus and whatnot, which I believe Arceus is going to factor into the
For
remakes a lot more than it did in the originals.
Absolutely. Just because he has a lot more established lore and character and all that now.
Right. They don't have to hide him anymore because he's been out forever. We know about him. So, but I think that's probably a good place to leave off. We ran a little longer than we were planning on, but that's fine. Got into a good discussion. So with that said, I want to thank everyone out there listening for tuning in. Appreciate it a lot. Be sure to follow wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, whatever it is. Also, obviously, got to thank Lockstin for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. It was awesome to have you on here. Really
Thanks
great.
for having me.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome to get a chance to talk to you. And be sure to, if you haven't already, you probably already have, but be sure to follow him as well. Links will be in the description of this video where you can find his channel and stuff. And yeah, with that said, be sure to also in the description, check out our sponsors as well. Give them a look if you're interested in that. And with that said, we will be back next Friday with another episode. It's going to be awesome. And in the meantime, hope you guys have a great weekend, great week. And until then, as always, I'll smell you guys later.